Hello and welcome to a short webinar on some of the resources that the National Youth Leadership Council has to offer to you. My name is Julie Rogers Bascom, and I'm the Director of Training and Leadership Development at NYLC. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about some of the resources that might help you if you are looking to use service learning as a strategy in your out-of-school program, but also in your in-school or classroom experience. I've used these handbooks with people in both settings, and I've really seen it as a tool to move through the process of service learning and engage young people in what I think is meaningful character development, leadership development, and a way to connect with hope for outcomes for young people. Now, one of the things that we often say in service learning is that there's maybe a misunderstanding, or it needs to be reinterpreted. I always say service learning is a process, not a project. What we at NYLC define service learning as is an approach to teaching and learning in which students use academic, civic knowledge and skills to address genuine community needs. I would also include in there that it's an opportunity to develop some life skills, some character development, as I mentioned, but connecting to the real world. I think this is a strategy, this experiential kind of learning is a strategy that really engages young people. And I think now more than ever, we're looking for ways to have meaningful conversations with our young people so they become the leaders we hope to see in the world. Now here at NYLC, we also talk about the 4 stages of service learning, and we're going to go briefly over them because there are, on our website, there are a lot of resources that dig a little bit deeper, but we really use a backwards design process where we really start with what is it that we hope young people will be able to develop, learn, or be able to do. So that stage 1 is really identifying desired results. That could be, as I mentioned, academic acquisition, but it could be character or civic learning. And then we talk a little bit about stage 2, which is how will you know that you received, that the young person has reached that hoped for outcome. Now those 2 stages are really something that the facilitator will be thinking about and planning about. And again, more resources on how to walk through that. But what these 3 books, the Engage series, and also some of the other handbooks that we have on our website, which are free, talks about that that 3rd stage, which is about the student experience. We call that IPARD. IPARD stands for investigation, planning and preparation, action, reflection, and demonstration. And these handbooks really help you walk through this process with young people. I'd like to introduce my colleague, Maddie Wagner, and I'm hoping, Maddie, that you'll say a little bit more about the organization that we work for.
Sure, Julie. I think if you could go to the next slide, we can illustrate that, Julie, with the fact that NYLC is based in St. Paul, Minnesota. We have worked nationally and to some extent internationally for now more than 35 years. I am happy to say that I've been a part of that work off and on over those years when I haven't been teaching. My background is in high school and middle school English language arts instruction. And for me, service learning really sort of ignited things in a way that I think I hadn't done before. And so I have seen it first as a teacher and then second as an out-of-school time worker myself. So that's where the mission, I guess, speaks to me, and I hope to the rest of you. Our mission is to create a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world with young people, their schools, and communities through service learning. So again, I hope that everybody at the conference and everybody can find themselves in that mission. And I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah. So Julie foreshadowed this a little bit. by saying we have two series of books we want to talk with you about today. This first series we call Engage. The focus here is out of school time, service learning. And as you see represented in those three covers, aimed at the younger students, elementary, middle, and high school. All are free, all are available at NYLC's website, nylc.org. And we'll say a bit more about how to access these materials later in this short webinar. Julie, if you want to move to the next slide. The other book series we want to at least mention for you, in part because in the time of this pandemic, when digital learning and online options are becoming what we do every day, there is an option for you in this series of books. So they're based on the 17 goal areas of the United Nations called the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm sure many of you know about these and are using them in what you do in your out of school and in school learning facilitation, but we've sort of embarked on a project to develop topical books around each of the goal areas. So you'll see with those icons in the upper left-hand corner there, the specifics that are the icons of the United Nations: quality education, well-being and health, and peace, justice, and institutional support being the 16th goal area. So the reason you see two with the green icon is that the one in the middle there is our step into the digital world. As Julie mentioned with the student experience, which these books take you through, the iPard cycle is 5 stages, and the middle stage of action is probably where most people wonder the most about how can we do this digitally. I think we have some ideas for you in the book, and Julie has some ideas from her own practice that we'll talk about in a bit. Each of these series, of the 2 series, starts with an introductory warm-up activity, then basically has sort of the more content-focused activity, and has a reflection. So they're all designed for basically 1-hour chunks of time and can be customized to your needs, expanded or shrunken. I think we can go to the next slide then.
So Maddie, tell us a little bit more about how the books are arranged.
Well, here you'll see there are 14 or actually 13 sessions. So this is designed, again, this is out of the out of school time Engage series table of contents. You'll see that you get through the first 3 sessions before you're part of iPard. And the way you know that is by looking at the chapter title, followed by investigation, planning and preparation, action, reflection, and demonstration. So we hope that we have mapped out a process for you all that is easy to follow on your own. And we, of course, are here to support you should you need additional support.
So what does an individual session look like?
In this case, Julie's pulled up a page out of our Engage book. And in that case, if you look in the left-hand margin, you'll see that there are learning objectives for each session specific to both social and emotional learning and the 21st century skills. So in the social and emotional realm, you're growing from self-awareness to social awareness to responsible decision-making. In the 21st century skills, a lot of these are about creativity and collaboration and communication. You also see the materials listed there. There are handouts at the end of each chapter that can easily be printed out. These books are really, again, designed for the adult facilitator of the experience. But I think working with older students, you'll find that often they can take the lead on the initial warm-up activities, as you see in this picture here.
Mm-hmm. Now, we also talked about the books that are around the Sustainable Development Goals. How are they different than the Engage books?
So if you remember that earlier set of slides, these are topically focused on the 17 Sustainable Development Goal areas. I should mention that we have 4 of them completed so far. We're working at the pace of about 4 a year. They all take the same pattern. So you'll see some similarities in this Sustainable Development Goals page, which happens to be out of the digital handbook on health and well-being. And it's similar, again, to the Engage series. This happens to be aimed at a high school audience. The outcomes, the time, these are much like what you see in Engage. A key difference here, and this is really Julie's contribution, one of her many contributions to the book, are the youth examples, which are from her practice in a Minnesota suburb. And so I think, Julie, you probably can say more about how those youth examples play out in out of school time.
I'd love to share with you some examples of how I have used these books as a way to jumpstart a collaboration with some young people. The first is really a reaction to what happened at the beginning of our spring when we all went to distance learning. I had been working with a group of young people, a leadership group, around before we went to distance learning. And when we came back together after that big week of transitioning, and I said, so I asked them, what is it that they want to address? What is it that they want to address? And one of their issues, what they were really concerned about, is how the social isolation was impacting teenagers, their young people, their friends. And so we followed this process. And I have to say that we use lots of bits and pieces from the book. That's the online health and well-being book. That's one of the beauties of these resources, is that while you don't have to word for word follow everything, it gives you a framework to walk through. So you make sure that you're allowing young people to do the investigation and go deep within. As a result of this conversation about what was it that the young people wanted to address, which is really key, meaningful service, youth voice, they were able to create a survey and got some feedback from young people. They were able to talk to their parents. They interviewed experts on social isolation. One young person in this group, who is really interested in science and brain development, looked at the impact of social isolation on brain development and emotion. So they took all this information, and that's when they decided how they were going to take action. And they had multiple different strategies and action plans. They created a video, they created a Instagram story. And if you're looking for more information, we did a webinar that they talked about their background of the process with which they took to take some action in a virtual setting. And before that, we were wondering, can we do virtual service learning? And the answer was absolutely. We can do service learning. We may not be able to be doing direct service, which is when you're really interfacing with the people you are serving with. But we were able to have impact, and they felt empowered at a time where they were feeling they were all seniors. They were feeling distressed. Another example I wanted to share with you was around a middle school group of young people who were in their out of school program. And it also connected with their in-school program. They were studying the impacts of human behavior on the environment. So they had done a walk around, and they identified within that environmental issue, what were some of the problems that they saw. One young person really noticed that there was a lot of water. We live in Minnesota here, and there's a lot of ice and snow in the winter, and ice can be very dangerous. And so they identified that the salt that was going into the water table, that was draining into the storm sewers and getting into the grass and getting into the creek, was a real detriment to their environment. So they came up with some strategies, in fact, even went to the city council and proposed a solution to some of the water issues, the salt water draining into the water table. So those are just a couple of examples of how we use this process in when we're working with young people and encouraging them to take action on problems that are of a concern to them. I'd like to tell you how you can easily access these materials by going to www.nylc.org. You'll find the handbooks we mentioned in this webinar and other resources that walk you through the service learning process to address the community issues that young people are concerned about by subscribing, which is free, or becoming a member. This is the home page, and you can navigate to the membership options right here in the top right page. By subscribing, you'll receive the Leader, which is a monthly newsletter, and special announcements. You'll be able to view the Resource Center page, download sponsored documents, and even track your clock hours for NYLC events online with a free subscriber account. You'll also be able to access all three of the Engage documents that we told you about, the Engage handbooks. And you'll also be able to access these 4 resources, the handbooks that are focused on the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals. Watch for a new handbook on the environment to be released in the next couple of weeks. If you're a subscribing member, you'll receive notice when it's available to download. By becoming a member of the NYLC Service Learning Network, you'll have access to member-only webinars, Ask the Expert service learning webinars, and all educator tools that help bring your service learning experience to life. Premium members have access to an online webinar archive of over 1,000 webinars. It gives you a discount on registration for our National Service Learning Conference and events. And it also, organizations can register for premium membership bundles and save 33% for their staff. Through our membership program, we are building the service learning community and are connecting members to other thoughtful, committed people who are working with young people as they change the world. Again, here is the web address to access these materials and other tools to build your service learning practice. Thank you for joining us on this introduction to some of the National Youth Leadership Council's resources. If you'd like to get in touch with us to share a story or ask a question, reach out to Maddie at mwagner@nylc.org or me, Julie Rogers Bascom, at jrbascom@nylc.org. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Thank you again.